I'll be talking to you about it. This I thought was probably a lot more, in sync with what Daniel Santiago wanted to do in his book.
There's no dal in this.
There's no dal. There's no dal. See, dal they used as a thickener, but the only thickener that we've added here is the rice. Daniel Santiago, he's my hero. So he wrote a book called The Curry Cook's Assistant and How to Make It in England. This was published in 1887. So he was from Ceylon, but had his roots in Trichinopoli, which is Trichy. He went as a native servant to serve the British and wrote a book busting myths associated with the curry powder and curry making. The book was published in London for more as a guide to returning East India officials and how to cook Indian food in England with the kind of stuff available there. He was very plaintive about the Mulagatawny, and he said, why did the British call it Mulagatawny and not Mulagatawny? He was very, his book, he's written it in what they call pidgin English, which is very, very colloquial spoken English. Back then, they were the English had to be set on stone, like the way they spoke, the grammar, everything. But in the preface, he actually admits that his English is broken, but he's happy talking about it. He's happy writing about what he feels. You can see he was a lot more rooted in the original recipes. He never wrote with the supremacy that Indian recipes are the best. That is something that I thought was admirable when you compare Colonel Wyvern and Daniel Santiago, because he was rooted. He said, these are the recipes. This is the original recipe. In his cookbook, he's mentioned both the Tamil name as well as the English name. And if you had to use the local ingredient, you can use this. If you had to use the ingredients available in London, you could use that. And he insisted that, talking about the curry powder, he insisted that every house must have a curry stone. Curry stone is nothing but amika. He said, to get a good curry powder, you need to have a curry stone. So it is a cookbook that was written in broken English for a book published back then. In his preface, he says he's absolutely comfortable writing that way. Now, talking about closer look at the evolution of the Mulagatawny soup. So the British asked the native cooks to make soup. This is like me going up to my wife and saying, can you make a lasagna for dinner? So the British asked the native cooks to make a soup, and they were perplexed. They were like, okay, what do we do? And something close to the soup, you could say, was the Muslim shorba. It was a thin strain again. So the cooks knew the humble pepper rasam or the Mulagatawny and served it with rice and a wedge of lemon. Obviously they strained it. They didn't give it to them because they were not used to the spices. They strained it, gave them a thin broth. And the British went mad. I mean, they just went mad with this concoction. So much so that the Britishers from Madras were called Muls because of their love for Mulagatawny. Just like how the Bombay Ducks, the Britishers from Bombay were called Ducks, English were called Muls. This was actually given. As an aid for digestion, either before or after the meal. It was more like how we give an appetizer, something to aid digestion. This was definitely part of every parakhana, and you could call this as the piece de resistance. How did the British tweak the soup? This is definitely one of the most celebrated of the Anglo-Indian dishes. Much like how we have fusion food today, everywhere we talk about Indian fusion. I think today's food is all about confusion, honestly. There's nothing to do with fusion. They just put together, they plate it in a beautiful way, they say it was fusion food. But they were not. The British knew exactly what they were doing. And this is the first fusion of British and Indian technique that became the hallmark of an emergent cuisine. The soup formulated in the 18th century or earlier. How did they tweak it? What was made with just water eventually became vegetable stock. Eventually, they started adding stock of